Check, check.
Good luck. All right, folks. So welcome to this council meeting. As you may notice that I am not Ali, and I'm not actually calling this meeting to order. Hello, Alexa. Oh, Josh, I think we could switch back. Sweet. Okay. So just want to let you know that what we'll do first is we'll do roll call, and then we'll appoint a chair for this meeting. We have someone who we will be nominating, who you may remember, called Elise. Who was our go-to chair last time. So yeah, we'll just do a quick check-in. I want folks to let us know, like A, how you're doing, B, any updates from your membership, and C, when your next meeting is. And this is just so that everyone can know in case we want to go or hear some shit going up, some things going on. Cool. So without further ado, I'm Sagar. I'm doing good. Updates, well, I'll do that in the executive report. Lots. And our next meeting is in 2 weeks. Word.
I'm Matt. I'm first-year rep, and I'm also part of the O'Brien Council. And we haven't really done much, but we're planning a dance in the beginning of January, so we're getting started on that. That's gonna be really exciting. And yeah.
I'm Laura. I'm the Women's Community Representative from the South House. There's an event tomorrow at 4 called Justice for Jessica, which is a trans activism event at the South House. So it would be great to come to that. It's in front of the sub.
I'm James. I'm the health professions representative. I'm doing fine. Not really much to report on. We might be doing a meeting in the next upcoming few weeks.
I'm Rebecca. I'm the Senate representative. We had a Senate meeting last week that went pretty well. We talked about... Do you remember what we talked about? We talked about the library. Yeah. Our next meeting is December 9th, I think. It seems really far away, but yeah.
My name's Emma. I'm the Dal Out rep. We had a pretty great event last Friday, the Rocky Horror Picture Show showing at King's, which was great. And yeah, I'm not really sure when our next event is, but I'll keep you updated.
Hi, I'm Ross. I'm the other first-year rep, and I'm also the president of Gerard Council, Gerard Hall, and we have that meeting tomorrow, and we're not really doing much, but dance with O'Brien, which should be fun, later on in January. Yeah, the meeting as for, first year doesn't really exist yet, so, yeah.
Hello, I'm John Hutton. I'm the Board of Governors rep, one of two. It's been an interesting 2 weeks. There's been a lot happening. We might have seen the university's VP Finance has left us, and we'll be hiring someone new eventually. But in the meantime, Ian Nathan's the new VP Finance. Been doing a lot of work around the libraries issues and working with some students to collect petition signatures and talk to the students about it, as well as talking to administration. So I've had some meetings with Dr. Florzone and Waters. So that's been interesting. And I also got appointed to the Budget Advisory Committee, which will be doing some consultations over the next year to talk about DAL budget issues. So if there's any issues that you want to talk about in your faculty specific, I'd be really interested to hear what your perspectives are. So just come talk to me after the meeting. I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ishika Sharma. I'm the International Students Representative, the VP External Affairs for DISA. And Dalhousie International Student Association just completed our badminton tournament, which went really well. We had many players, great prizes won. One of our multicultural societies, INDISA, representing the Indian Subcontinent Association, celebrated our annual festival of Diwali this weekend. Yeah, that was actually a lot of fun. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We have, DISA has its next council meeting tomorrow, 5:30 to 7:30 in room number 316 sub. If anyone's interested, they may come join us. The Sexual and Gender Resource Committee is working with the South House on the screening of a homophobic movie, eventually by probably the next weekend. Besides that, I did get elected as the VP Academic Affairs with DAGS. And as thanks. And yeah, as part of that, my next assignment probably is the graduate student seminars. Those are the updates from me.
Hi, I'm Alex Killam. I sit on Senate also. I'm also sitting on the Student Ratings of Instruction Working Group, so we're working on how to move forward with that. We've had a lot of tension in Senate over that, which is interesting. I'm sitting on the Learning and Teaching Committee also. And today we spoke about the academic dates for next year, which have been approved. And yeah, that's about it.
Hi, I'm Karthik. I'm the VP External of Computer Science Society. So this week we have our social events, the Geek Beer, and we're going to slightly modify it with the Pokemon theme. So it's a Pokemon Geek Beer happening at the CS Society Atrium, in the CS Atrium. And next week we have our annual formal event. It's called the Snowball. So it's a faculty and student awards function. We got several awards and scholarship to be given to students, faculty. You have the Srini Award, Best Teaching Assistantship Award, and so on. And it's happening in Western Nova Scotia, followed by a dinner. And then we have the next update would be we have our council meeting next Tuesday on November 12th. And that's it for now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brett. I sit on Senate, and I'm the DAG senator as well. That seems weird because it's both senator, but whatever. And DAGS has a new VP academic, so that's wicked. And our meeting is on Thursday at 4? Yes, Thursday at 4. Upstairs in the grad house. It's licensed.
Hi, my name's Alwyn. I'm actually here for Teradon, who's the Faculty of Medicine rep. I'm just here as her proxy. Things that we have going on, I guess we're in the works of getting a new dean, going through that search. As events, on November 29th, we have the Dalhousie Health Profession Choral and Ensemble Portia White concert, which is something you guys should all go to. I think it's at the Rebecca Cohen. And our next meeting is November 27th.
Hey guys, I'm Pat. I'm VP External for DAGS. I guess biggest update for me, I don't know if I've said this before, but we're going to be writing a paper with Students Nova Scotia on graduate student issues, and that's actually coming together now. So we're going to be meeting pretty soon, and we may, which is exciting, have some writers from the agricultural campus as well writing the paper so they can speak to rural student issues and give a bit more of a perspective of students who don't live and study in Halifax.
Hey guys, I'm Alex. I'm from the Commerce Society. We got two big things going on this month. We have a case competition for first years to get them involved in something that's fairly prominent in the business world, case competitions. And then we have our big push for Movember.
Hey, I'm Greg. I'm the president of the Engineering Society. Beth wanted me to let you know that I have her proxy tonight. I think she forgot to mention that. And our next big charity event is next Saturday. It's called Pulling for the Kids. I believe Rams emailed all of you the information. It'd be really awesome if we could get a team from each faculty. It's a charity event, so if you can raise a little bit of money, that'd be awesome.
Hi, I'm Francis. I'm the DSS rep. Not a whole lot going on with us, just sort of updates from our D levels. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks, and we're still looking for a communications officer.
I'm Sam. I'm the vice president of the Science Society, and as Francis said, we don't have many events for this term, but next term we're going to do things like a CPR course, symposium, lecture off, stuff like that. So stay tuned.
Hi everybody, my name is Taylor Quinn. I'm DAS rep and DAS president, Arts and Social Sciences. And the last 2 weeks have probably been some of the busiest 2 weeks for DAS in my history with the society. We've taken a real stance on what's going on with the library issue and the broader attack on the student academic experience. We started a petition, we've been petitioning, and other great groups of students have been petitioning, and there's a lot of students out there and groups out there around this issue. So we're petitioning every day from yesterday until next Thursday in the McCain lobby, and some groups are in the library and the sub as well. So if you want copies of the petition to do class talks or whatnot, I'm advocating that the university prioritizes the university should prioritize the student academic experience because it's currently not being prioritized at the university level, finance-wise. So come chat with us, sign the petition. But yeah, DAS is going well. Our next meeting is next Wednesday at 6:30 in the council chambers. And last week's meeting, we had all sorts of random people come because they wanted to talk about library stuff, which was really cool. And we had a really good meeting.
I'm Caitlin, and I'm the Vice President Internal of the Arts Social Sciences Society, and I sit as Arts Rep. Along with the petition, DAS, as a council, has also agreed to write and sign a letter to the administration explaining our stance on the university's not prioritizing the student academic experience. And as well, we had DAS Donuts, in which we set up in the McCain. We had food. We encouraged people to come over, look at the petition, sign some letters. And we also, as a council, passed the Dal United Bill of Rights. Oh. And we've also put together a fact sheet on the library issue.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle. I'm the Aboriginal Students Rep. And recently, the Dalhousie Native Student Association has started up some Mi'kmaq language classes. And I think that's all I can report on today.
Hi, I'm Alexa. I'm the outgoing secretary.
That was depressing.
For next year, she might stay.
I'm Josh, the VPFO. I don't know if I really need to say where our meetings are at, but you all know.
Hey everyone, I'm Aaron. I'm the Vice President, Academic and External. It's been a lot going on. 2 really successful actions last week, a lot of different stuff over the last month. Now I'm kind of at a point of, like, everything I've been doing the last couple weeks has been stuff I planned 3 months before, but I don't have a lot of really specific things I'm tied to coming up. So it's actually a really great time for you to give me feedback if you have thoughts on what we've done so far and what we should do coming up. I'm looking to vision the winter and the years after that. There's a couple specific events at the end of November, but I'll let you know about them later. Thanks.
I'm Elise Graham. I'm the fill-in chair for tonight, but I'm also a staff person for the Equity and Accessibility Office, and we have a committee meeting tomorrow at 7 in the office down the halls, and everyone should come to it. We're going to be talking about our upcoming campaigns, so it's going to be really exciting, and I'll bring some treats.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ramz Aziz, and Vice President Internal. That was so formal. But you can read my report. We can read what I did in my report. But 2 things to highlight are the member survey for the sub-renovations and the society survey for the sub-renovations that are going out. So, for feedback.
All right. So to get things started, first item of business is to appoint a chair for this meeting. If anyone would like to nominate anyone in the room.
Elise.
All right. Do I have a second? Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right. Hearing none, Elise, you have been awarded the seat as chair by acclamation. I will pass it over to you.
Okay, so the first thing is that we have on the agenda is the acceptance of the agenda, but should I just note the few changes? In 5, under 5, it says that it is a decision about the sub-renovations, but it's actually discussion. We unfortunately can't vote on any decisions about that right now. And I think that's actually it for the changes. Okay, so, yeah. Oh, we have to vote on actually changing that? Okay, so can I get someone voting? Seconder? Seconded over there. All in favor? Cool. So now can I get someone to motion to accept the agenda as it is? You there? If people want to hold up their signs when they're, okay. And seconder? Okay. All in favor? Okay. So, number 4, we're moving right along here. Acceptance, yeah. Number 3, acceptance of the previous meeting minutes, yeah. So, for people who've read them, can I get a seconder for that? Okay. So were technically those minutes already voted on and accept? No?
Okay. So yeah, just to clarify, we're voting right now on the meeting minutes from last meeting and the meeting before that. So are there any other changes?
Does anyone have any, can someone give Williams speaking privileges? Okay. So maybe we will postpone that till next meeting?
Or no. Just because they haven't been posted because they haven't been approved yet.
Yeah, they'd be approved.
Yeah.
That is approved.
Okay, so does anyone else have any changes they want to make?
Oh, really? Oh, my bad. Okay. We'll get on it. Thank you, William.
So can we vote on the minutes from the meeting, not last meeting, but the meeting before?
If it's friendly with council, I'd like to vote on them all as one. Is that fair? All motion to accept the meeting minutes as amended, the only amendment being the one from Ishika.
Okay, can I get a seconder? All in favor? Okay, motion passes. Okay, next. Okay. Next, number 4 on the agenda is a presentation, and we have an advocacy review presentation from Rochelle. So Rochelle will give her presentation, and then we'll motion for a vote for a moderated caucus. Where is Rochelle? Right here. Okay. Did you want to hand this to Rochelle?
So my name's Rochelle, and I'm the Advocacy Review Coordinator. So I'm helping that advocacy review. Oh, yeah, great. So what the Advocacy Review Committee has been up to, we've been active since the summer, even though I just joined in earlier in the fall. And we started by researching into other student unions that have dropped their or reduced their membership into CASA. So what we've been doing is outreaching to societies and setting up meetings for presentations with those societies and trying to gauge how much students within those groups know about CASA and Students Nova Scotia. So what you're getting passed around to you now is some of the responses I think all of the responses from the online survey that we've had up for a couple weeks. So we've been trying to promote the survey with these little pink sheets in the consultations with the groups. We've also had a couple of events where we've promoted the survey at. So we did one morning where we handed out free food in the lobby of the sub in exchange for filling out the survey. Then we also had a town hall event where it wasn't very well attended, but a lot of students came who had really strong opinions about these organizations. So then they were followed up with via email. So as well as those things, we've been postering and just trying to raise an awareness among students that the advocacy process is going on. Because as you'll see from a lot of the responses, people feel really disconnected from what's going on in the DSU. And we're just trying to let them know that this is an outlet to voice their concerns. So some of the questions that we've been asking on the survey, you can see it in front of you, is, can I see yours? So how do you think the DSU is advocating for students? And then like a couple qualitative questions about how much do you know about CASA? How much do you know about Students Nova Scotia? How do you think the DSU should relate to larger external organizations of student unions? And like just a general question about what issues matter to you. What do you care about that you think the DSU should be advocating for? So the responses to the more quantitative questions are printed out on the sheets. And then the responses that we had from the questions that were asking you how much do you know about CASA and Students Nova Scotia was on a scale of 1 to 3, 1 being the least, and 3 being I understand what the organization is and what it does. So we got 83 responses. For Students Nova Scotia, 40 students said that they knew nothing about Students Nova Scotia or and had never heard of it before. 17 students said that they've heard of it but don't know what it does. 9 students know a bit about what it does, and 11 students understand it and what it is fully. And then for CASA, 44 students answered 0, 10 students answered 1, 9 students answered 2, and 13 students answered 3. So I realized this is like a really small percentage of like the DAL student population, and it's not really like what we're trying to do now is really to try and get it out there more and to kind of promote it to more groups of students, and then possibly do another event where we can get people to fill out the survey right there, because what we were finding is that even though you were presenting to the group, they weren't necessarily filling out the survey. Also, we found that it's kind of hard to have a discussion about CASA and Students Nova Scotia at the same time, and that maybe these are like 2 different discussions that we should be having, but like we're really looking for council's like suggestions and where you think we should go from here. Like obviously we need to get more student input, but like what should we be doing with this input, I think is what we're asking. Does anyone have any questions?
So we have to actually move to go. Sorry, oh, I thought you were putting up your hand. Into moderated caucus. So can I get someone? Okay, motion. We actually had allotted a longer time. If you 10 minutes. Okay. Seconder. Okay, so this will just be a this is just a moderated discussion, which will, just be a discussion right now. So that would come after if you had a motion. That is what moderated caucus is, yeah. It's kind of, well, I mean, if someone has a question for Rochelle, then she can answer it in the moderated caucus. Can I get a seconder? All in favor? So I'll be keeping a speakers list. So if you want to just put up your card and I'll note. And I'm also going to be giving priority to first-time speakers. So you are first.
The question was how many people had taken the survey, and from which populations were these people taken from? Because I see there was one from there was a graduate, at least one graduate student, if not more. But I certainly don't think. I mean, I'm a first year. I'm a first year student here, and I didn't hear about this at all. No one said anything to me, whatsoever. So just wanted to know where you got your source material.
So we were only able to reach 83 students, and most of these responses came from when we were handing out free food in the lobby of the sub. And then also we sent out an email to all the representatives at council asking if they wanted to meet for a consultation.
Yeah, I think a big part of getting a better sample, just because I feel like a lot of the people who are using the sub as a resource and going to the sub are people who are already kind of involved and kind of know about the issues, so it's not really a fair sample size. So I think an important discussion to have, I mean, outside of tonight, but would be on figuring out how to have other ways of reaching students who, like you said, like just don't know that this is existing, because the sample that we're getting of people who are mostly people who already kind of are involved potentially with knowledge about these issues. So I think, yeah, in the future, that's something that should be further discussed.
Yeah, you can't see it in the submissions that we have here because they're not laid out based on who, like the different answers aren't for the different people who submitted, but on the committee, sorry, I sit on the committee, so I know a bit about this, but at the committee level, you can actually see, and I'm pretty sure that there's a certain number of people who submit because they care about the issue, right? It can be a polarizing issue, and some people have really strong opinions on it. For those people, it seems like if they see a poster, if they followed what the DSU was doing last year, they know and they'll submit, right? And then other people, if you approach them, give them free food or talk to them about the issue, they will, but they'll generally not know as much, and they'll select the lower numbers on those two quantitative sections. I think what I'd like to personally have a discussion about while we're here is how to actually move forward. And there's a couple of recommendations about that, but.
We've got Rob Ford in the corner there.
Sorry, guys. Just wanted to bring a little levity to the evening. Take the edge off, if you know what I mean. Sorry. Yeah, really to crack jokes. Okay, so my name's Pat. I also sit on the Advocacy Review Committee with Aaron and others. One of the things that came up a lot was that, as you can see, a lot of students are responding that they have no idea what these organizations are. And the people who are responding about them obviously are quite passionate about them, for those who do. So one of the discussions we had is, we do need to continue to do outreach and try and get a broader population, as you guys have been saying, and make sure that we're engaging more people about how we advocate. But the other thing that came up a lot in conversation was that these are organizations that we use as a tool to advocate for students. So really, students expect the DSU to advocate for them in a lot of cases, and they don't necessarily know what these organizations are because they have no reason to have. They don't do broad outreach for the most part. They're basically a tool for student unions to use. It's like an alliance of student associations. So what we were saying was it might make more sense to, when the decision is finally made on this issue, to have it amongst council rather than some kind of referendum. Now, I know this is jumping way ahead of the game, but it's just the idea that obviously students are polarized, so they either have no idea what it is or they're really, really passionate about the issues. So what we're thinking is we can have a more fulsome discussion here once we've had a lot more consultation with students about how they think we should be advocating for them. Yeah, I'll stop there for now.
My main thing is about the consultation with students only. Seems looking at this that most of the students have no idea about what advocacy is or what DSU's, what the scope of DSU's advocacy is. And the biggest question here is about Students Nova Scotia too. I see at least one comment from an international student saying that the SNS does nothing to support the international differential fee. They are doing something, but it's just not exactly directly in the way that we expect that it should be talking about. We have had discussions about what their different way or process their formula is. So I think besides just consulting within societies, it's better if you could present it on a platform that reaches to more students. Sending an email would not make sense because half of the students do skip it. And I know this because my friends do that a lot of time. I have to remind them that, no, you got to read that email. It's important. So if you plan on taking on other outreach opportunities, they would probably include something like going one-to-one with people and talking to them, probably during lunch hours or something. But students need to be educated about what SNS does or what CASA is or how it affects us.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to talk quickly. I am very math-brained. So in order for a simple random sample out of 18,922 students to be statistically significant on a 90% confidence interval, we would have to ask 6,371 students, which is a lot. And yeah, 6,371 is the magic number. We have 83, and so just like understanding that that's like a very massive gap. At the same time, like there are a lot of real life issues, like challenges with this. Not all of that 6,371 understand what the word advocacy means. I didn't know what the word advocacy was till like a year ago. And so I think that that's something that we also need to be considering. One other thing that I would love to see the Advocacy Review Committee do, and I've sit on the committee as the vice chair, and I've been saying this, but we haven't been doing it, is understanding what students care about, like what students prioritize. So i.e. students would love, students are passionate about the library, study space, quality of education, and international differential fees. And then look at our advocacy and see how we're doing on those four things. If we're not doing well on those four things, the Advocacy Review Committee would make recommendations to adjust our advocacy. So that's kind of my like move forward from here. It's like I think that this was providing some information that's not very statistically significant on our external lobbying organizations, but I would love to see what people actually gave two hoots about. And it's pretty easy if you want to guess. Like study space is a big one. So.
I think it's a really important thing to do is not just necessarily, I mean, I agree, definitely we need to gauge how the policies suit what students actually want to do, but like actually ask people what they want. One of the first things that, and it was rather kind of a stark, you know, I certainly knew that the DSU existed was in one of my classes, we had a couple presentations, and we had posters everywhere, all sorts of places. And one of my, one of the people in my hall came up to me and said, he said to me, he said, Ross, what does the DSU do other than just propaganda? And it felt like, you know, that stuck in my mind in the sense of, you know, he felt that there really wasn't any. It was just the DSU had some sort of conceptualization of what the students below it wanted, but didn't really have any sense of what the students actually wanted, but only what they thought that they wanted. And there's a big disconnect, and I think that that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. As you know, advocacy doesn't necessarily need to address only a single small portion of the population. It's for everybody. And if people are feeling disenfranchised by the advocacy, that's a problem.
I just wanted to comment on the survey and how it should probably be made clear what advocacy is and what you're asking, because it's asking for an DSU advocacy review. And one thing that could be very easily confused with is Dalhousie Student Advocacy Services, which is right down the hall there and represents students at discipline and appeals hearings. And certainly you don't want responses based on how well people are being represented by the law students when you're really looking for political action.
So I used to sit on the board for Students Nova Scotia. I used to be on CASA. And I think one thing you really need to understand about these two organizations is they're tools for the DSU to get things done at the provincial and federal level. So while educating the students about what they do may come in handy when you're trying to pass a referendum question, what you actually really want from this, I think, is to synthesize what the students are telling you and present it to these organizations so that they can do what essentially students are paying them to do. I think there might need to be like a little shift in kind of what you're expecting from this. You're never going to really get 100% of your student population knowing what Students Nova Scotia does or what CASA does. But I think what you need to think about is, does that really matter? I mean, after 4 years and they graduate, does that really matter if they didn't know what Students Nova Scotia did or what CASA did, as long as they were able to kind of reap the benefits of it? So I think that's something that you need to consider in this review.
I just actually had just some questions about what the Student Advocacy Review Committee is planning to do to more so educate students about these different organizations, because going into a review session, you're kind of expecting that the people already know what you're talking about, but it's important that the students know about each of the organizations and how they work and how they best reflect students' needs. And I was also wondering what you guys are planning to do to outreach to more students, but not at a risk of the quality of your feedback. So I'm not saying to go run down the meal hall and try and get as many students as possible, but get actual good quality information from students, but more of it. I don't know if I can go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start by saying that we just started printing out like the paper copies of the things. So when we go to consultations, like you can fill it out right there. It's not a very long survey, and because we're going away from the consultations and like our numbers in the survey responses, we're going up by like 1 or 2, but not really a lot. So I think having it like materialized on paper is possibly going to boost some results. What were you?
Hey guys, 2 more quick things. Yeah, I'd say that based on the small sample, we have an opportunity to change the questions around now. So we've probably, you know, maybe it wasn't a representative sample, but this is giving us the information we need to maybe change the way we're asking the questions. Provide a little bit of, as Brett mentioned, provide a little bit of information and then ask questions after they've, you know, been a little bit more informed on the issue. The other thing is this committee was struck in response to conversations that were happening last year around how CASA and SNS were doing what they do and whether or not that was consistent with how DAL feels that they should be advocating for students. So I think that that's something that we may not necessarily be able to get from students because it involves a huge amount of, I mean, we've talked about it now for several meetings with the committee, and we still sometimes go in circles on it. So trying to get students to have a fulsome discussion about it could be really challenging. So that's why I think I kind of agree with Sagar in that it makes sense to ask questions about what students' objectives are for Dalhousie to advocate for them, and then whether Students Nova Scotia and whether CASA are effective tools for us to connect with the federal and provincial governments to achieve those objectives. So that's something that we're going to want to be talking about moving forward.
Yes, so I think kind of an overarching theme that I saw throughout this discussion was like the ability to reach out to more students to get a better, has there been any talk or discussion on potentially creating maybe like less formal than a subcommittee, but for lack of a better word, subcommittee, just based on like outreach and how to do that instead of kind of just trying to, a couple people trying to figure it out, if we had like a group of people that was working on that issue specifically, like how to get a better population of students to talk about this kind of stuff. I don't know. I just wondered if it come up.
So like a team of volunteers that really care about advocacy and want to like help, is that, I don't really.
Well, just in general, like how to reach out to more students because yes. Yeah, just because it is an issue trying to figure out like Facebook messages, emails, like that stuff hasn't really worked in the past. So, I mean, just like a subcommittee of people maybe working with the Advocacy Review Committee or whatever to see not even just on this issue but on other issues too, how to reach more students.
That hasn't been something that we've discussed when I've been at the meetings, I don't think, but maybe someone who's been on the committee longer has more insight.
I've moved it. If someone wants to second it.
Does someone want a second to extend the meeting by 10 minutes? Well, first we have to vote on this motion.
I'll make it 5 minutes.
Seconded. All in favor? Okay. So actually, if we extended, Sagar is next, and then you're next.
I was opposed to extending it, but just being considerate of time, understanding that we have notes from this and can take these notes to the next Advocacy Review Committee meeting, given all these suggestions. The last thing I would say is, forgive me, I didn't get your name, Mr. Dalmed. Hey, Alwyn. Okay, cool. Nice to meet you from across the room. Quickly, I appreciate the sentiment you shared about students don't necessarily need to know what SNS or CASA are. They are tools for the student union to use. I guess what there's something that I would point attention to or call out is that in our Constitution, a general student vote would have to be held for a referendum would have to be held if we wanted to alter the membership of either of those organizations. So then something that like this is starting to bring my attention is that the best way to go about it if we're not really caring if students know what these organizations are, or should it be something at council or an AGM, or is there another possibility? But just something to consider, and maybe something for the Advocacy Review Committee to consider.
Yeah, thanks. And I extended it 5 minutes because I feel like this is a really, really important decision, and we haven't actually had a really lengthy discussion while everyone's been back from the summer. It also has to move along pretty quick. So, yeah, I would also like to agree with Alwyn that these organizations aren't meant to be outreached with. Like, it's really hard to hand someone a CASA lobby doc and be like this is what CASA is, and like talk to them about those issues. They're meant as a tool for the student union to use. Actually, the recommendation from the Advocacy Review Committee is that this decision not be made by referenda, that it be made at council. And I think that what that would mean is that we, as council, spend time to educate ourselves about it. So I actually wanted to ask the question, like, what do people actually think about the issue? less the process. The Advocacy Review Committee and Rochelle will go off and like take those things into consideration, try to do better consulting broader students, having better discussions. But what do people hear? What are people hearing? What are people hearing from their constituents? Or what do you think about the issue and how we should move forward?
Did you have your hand up?
Okay, so I have a knack for saying like really stupid stuff and just, yeah. So I don't even know who any of these organizations are. And I mean, I think that students only really care that there is someone to go to advocate for them rather than who actually does the advocating. So I don't know. I mean, if the case is that students do need to know who these organizations are for voting things, I think that that needs to be changed, that the students shouldn't have to know who these organizations are.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Zagar was saying about reevaluating what DAL students want and like if the advocacy they want can be like where that can happen. I think that's the most important thing, like where that falls. I also was hoping that Zagar would clarify what he said. I didn't really understand. Like you said that like constitutionally is where it has to happen. Yeah. Are you saying that we should change that? I'm just not sure. Okay. I would love some. I know it has to be brief, but.
Okay. I can shout to the mic. So the Constitution states that if we wanted to reevaluate or alter our membership status with any external lobbying organizations, we'd have to hold a student referenda, which then poses the question, is that the best way to decide these things if students aren't in touch with these organizations, or at least the 83 people, the majority of them weren't in touch with these organizations. And understanding that this is a tool for our advocacy, who's best equipped to make that decision or best educated?
Thank you. Very quickly, one suggestion to the DSU exec, one suggestion to council. DAS had Rochelle come to our council meeting last week, and we had a really interesting conversation on our arts council about advocacy and whatnot. So if you are here and have a council meeting or committee meetings, take this presentation, have this conversation with your constituents. Use the street team for stuff like this. Use the street team. You have a street team, they should be utilized for stuff like this, not just in the sub lobby, but out on the streets.
Was there a referenda held to reduce our membership in CASA to associate membership?
No, but that was constitutionally changed at the AGM after council had voted. It was 22 to 9 on the council vote.
And I would encourage everyone, if they have any more suggestions, to email Rochelle or talk to Rochelle about that. I'm sure she would appreciate, or the council, like Advocacy Review would appreciate people's thoughts. So the next thing on the agenda will be the discussion about the sub-renovations, and you're going to actually take this one over?
Obviously, we had a really kind of robust discussion last time, so we kind of just wanted to see if anyone else had anything new. So I was going to propose, not even as really a motion, but just kind of an informal, pass it around, everyone gets a minute. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. You can pass the mic along, but kind of just speak about what you might have heard from any constituents or any new thoughts you might have, if everyone's okay with that. Cool.
So at the Arts and Social Sciences DAS meeting, we had Sagar come in and do the full presentation that we saw about the sub and the renovations. Mostly students were interested in the extra study space that will be available and the fact that the atrium will be 24 hours. There was some concerns about some of the more less practical aspects of the design, just like the outdoor porches and stuff. But other than that, we also talked a little bit about the consultation process. I thought the consultation process could have been a little more. For example, a lot of King students actually wanted to get their opinions heard, and people on Sexton campus felt left out. But other than that, it was pretty good.
There's not too many levied societies around the table, so other than science, I believe. But levied societies have talked about how. If there's others, I apologize. Oh yeah, Dallas. Sorry. That's true. Sorry, everyone. Anyways, it's been a long day. But very quickly, levied societies, there's been emails going around about how the consultation process has been good. And in my role as DAS, I see it being good. But levied society, actual suggestions haven't been really incorporated into the plan in terms of creating like a society hub. And I don't know how I feel about all this levied society opinions on things, but those opinions as levied societies haven't been heard and incorporated into the plans as well as people hoped they would be.
Cool. So at our last council meeting for the Science Society, we posed the question and we voted on would you vote yes to the referendum of like the $13 million plan, and the results on that was no, just for you guys to keep that in mind. That was about it.
It was pretty much like the majority. We said no.
It's interesting because I posed that also to my council, and it was an overwhelming yes that they wanted to go. They wanted to see these plans go through. Two things that really kept coming up from my point of view, or from my end, was the outdoor patios. We live in Canada. I mean, like, are they really going to be that useful? That was a big thing for them structurally. And then the other big thing was financially, is where's the money coming from? I keep having the same conversation with students about this money is not coming from DAL specifically. It is for the DSU because they're really concerned about all the other fee increases with the new rec facilities on both Sexton and Studley campus and all that stuff. So yeah, patios and where the fees are coming from.
Is this for the sub renovations? Yeah. Beth and I both abstain because it doesn't really concern our constituents. It's not a vote, by the way. Oh, well, we're just like, we just, nah. Don't have anything to say. Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, it's a brilliant move by the present executives to renovate the sub. I mean, like expand the sub. Like, I mean, I really find there was less seating space even for the present sub building. Like, it's too small for the amount of students we have no current now. One thing I like to say is like the next Tuesday we have a council meeting for the Computer Science Society. So I like to invite any member from DSU to give a brief presentation on the what are the various renovations you're going to make on sub, like for learning, for recreation, and other stuff. So it'll be, I would appreciate it to such a level, like if some of our society members as well as students, they could understand what exactly is the sub renovation is that. So it's like advocacy, it has to be advertised to other people. So it starts at 6 at the CS Learning Center, room 211. Yep.
I keep hearing the concern about gender-neutral washrooms, and I'm actually unclear on where we are with that right now, but I'd just like to reiterate, like, that's a really important thing for our students. And can someone answer that for me, or is that still kind of in the works? And great.
My recent discussions from certain international students and within the Sexual and Gender Resource Committee, the points that came out, one was that it was mostly about reorganization of what resources we currently have in the sub, like placing the info desk somewhere in the corner so that when you enter, you just don't hit into it or something. Somebody said that, yes. And gender neutral washrooms, that was a big concern within our Sexual and Gender Resource Committee that comes under DSA. Addition of more water fountains, and people are still confused about where the money is going to be coming from. And Sex in Campus international students are not in favor of giving out their vote towards the sub renovations, mainly because they say it doesn't concern us. And unless you have an international student space, like provide international center and additional office on it, but I believe that would not come within the constituency of a student union. That was mostly it. Yeah, and like you mentioned, we probably don't need patios, because then you would have to get people in and do the job of shoveling off the snow for most of the part of the winters. That's just it.
So as I've been doing some petitioning around the library issues, I've heard this enough times to make it, I think, actually worth noting. A lot of students are saying, well, the library has no money to buy books, but we can build a new sub. Now, clearly that's a little not correct, because the money is raised through a student fee over time and can only be spent on renovations, but there is a perception issue. This is what I've heard a few times talking to people pamphleting, and the plural of anecdote is not data, but worth noting.
The only thing I've really gotten from is nobody really knows what the hell is going on. There's a lot of alienated feeling of like, well, what are they doing? They're building a new sub. What's wrong with the old sub? You know, there's a lot of confusion as to why from a lot of people I've spoken to. Yeah, a lot of people just don't know things are going on. Things are just kind of going around their head.
I know the Dell Out still has some concerns about A, gender neutral washrooms, which has been brought up a few times, and B, about the Dell Out office being in private space and also having an office that is big enough. I know that there's been talk of some of the levied societies and just societies in general and office spaces becoming smaller than they already are, which is not that great, seeing as these societies provide essential services and they need their space. And more on a personal note, just talking to people that I know, a lot of people feel like a lot of the additions, like such as the atrium and like DSS was saying, a lot of people feel like that's kind of an unnecessary addition. We need more seating, we need other things to be fixed, and it's not like a need when the money could be going towards better things.
I'm going to ditto what a lot of people said with the with JD, with the perception issue of, I know it's like different money and stuff, but that's definitely something that like pretty much anyone that I've seen in the past 2 months, I've asked them, what do you think about the sub renovations? Tried to get feedback, and that's a really common thing is like, yeah, it's great, but like I can't hear my professor in the LSC because of the dripping behind me because there's a hole in the roof, you know? And I know it's like, it's different things, but it's definitely something to think about because that's how students are currently perceiving it. I was talking to the Dal Jam Society, so this might be a little bit biased, but a jam space that is soundproof was raised. I know, it'd be awesome. Yeah, levied societies too was a concern that I heard a lot about. And then, yeah, that the atrium is kind of unnecessary. A lot of the different, like the more seating and all that practical stuff is good. But yeah, a lot of the excess stuff people saw as kind of a waste when it's more or less fine as most of it is.
Okay, so I don't see Colby here today. He's my other health professions rep, so you're only getting one half of the story. We did send out an email, but our people that we report to or report from, they health professions. So everyone's in their own little world. Personally, aside from the money issues and where the money's coming from what I think I know, the money that we've raised so far for the DSU or the sub renovations, that's all we can spend that money on, right, is renovations? Okay. So, and also for the lowest project without the atrium and without the patio, we we have enough to pay for that without raising. Okay, so kind of how I looked at it, like when students think about Dalhousie, they imagine the Henry Hicks building and how beautiful it is outside, and then they go in and it's like concrete and old paint and it's cold and whatnot. So I mean, we kind of need this. We need a nice new building that we can show in the pictures that people can be proud of. And frankly, like the old sub, the way it is right now, it's operational. It's fine. It works. But the new sub, what we need is we need it to be also cosmetically nice. So I think that we need to go for the $13 million renovations, but I think that it can wait. I think that we should wait till we have enough money to pay for it rather than raising student tuitions. Because again, we got the students that are going to be paying for it aren't going to be here when it's finished.
In terms of gender-neutral washrooms, it's good to hear that they're planning for more. We just wanted to note that it would be really important to have gender-neutral washrooms in the Greywood. If it's going to be open on its own while the rest of the building is closed, then it would be inaccessible if there was no gender-neutral washrooms there. Okay. You're on it. From the feedback I got, I think opinions were mixed on the atrium, that it sounds really cool, the idea of green space is cool, that it might not be worth all that extra money. It's a lot, and definitely we're supportive of the concerns of the levied societies and having the space that they need to do their work. So that's the feedback I got.
Yeah, I brought it to my council after last meeting, and a lot of us thought it was the atrium. A lot of us thought it was pretty unnecessary. We weren't really willing to pay for it. So, yeah. But we thought the extra study space and everything else was pretty cool. But the atrium really was something we didn't really care about or want.
I just want to thank everyone for actually taking the time to take it to their councils. Like, I really, really appreciate that. That's what democracy looks like, right? If you, what? Well, yeah, totally. Who's to say I'm not going to? Sure. Also, I just want to, like, two things that I'm hearing the most are, like, levied societies and gender neutral washrooms. And one point of clarification I want to put out there is that we are hearing the concerns of levied societies, but the architects aren't going to turn around and do a brand new design instantly. And so right now we're trying to collect all of this feedback, and I understand I feel like there's a lot of impatience and frustration from levied societies that they haven't seen a change, and we haven't guaranteed them anything, but that's because we're trying to roll it all out at once in terms of here's the new stuff for levied societies, here's the look of the building because nobody wanted patios, so this is what it looks like without patios. So I'm going to say that, like, just so to bring everyone else up to speed, by December 1, I can start having conversations with people around what we've kind of directed the architects to redesign. But in the meantime, I'd love to have more conversation about that because we're still realistically just compiling all this data. So I apologize. I'm taking way more airtime than I should be. But again, like, thank you from the bottom of my heart for actually talking to people about this.
So we had allotted 20 minutes, and we have 5 more minutes. If anyone had anything they were dying to say, also priority to first-time speakers who haven't said anything, aside from the go-around because everyone said something.
So one of the things with this whole perception, like where's the money coming from, we've had that issue at a lot of our council meetings. A lot of the science society spends a lot of their time in the LSC, so it's been an issue, especially like the library as well. But I don't think it's like we understand that there are like these two separate budgets, and that there's the sub budget and then there's the university budget, and those aren't the same thing. But we've been talking about maybe having like a monetary gift, like instead of students voting for a $25 increase for those for the renovations, giving like a different amount, a smaller amount, and have like set restrictions as to what that money would go to, and we would give that as a gift to the university to put it towards those things, such as library renovations and things like that. And I think Sagar knows a bit more about it because Emma's been talking to you about it. But just to bring that up that it's not as black and white as there's nothing else to do other than renovate the sub, or do you know what I mean? Like what I'm getting at?
So we talked about it a little bit at council, but just sort of speaking in our personal capacities, we were talking about how the atrium, yeah, it sucks that it's a boatload of money, but I think it's a really useful thing for DAL to have. It's a really useful meeting space. It's a place to go to in terms of saying, you know, well, why have an atrium when we need more study space? Well, the atrium is study space. And really good and awesome study space, especially for meetings, especially for events. So I went to undergrad at McMaster, and we had a really nice atrium in the Student Center. The Student Center opened just a couple years before I was there, and it's awesome. So there are ups to it that I think we're sort of skipping over here that are worth considering.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I went to SMU. And we... yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even go here. We kind of went through the similar thing when we were actually building our atrium. I was kind of like, well, why do we want this big building that's hollow and has like 3 stories, just like glass? But what we didn't realize is when it comes to study space, there is something to be said about quality versus quantity. I mean, yes, it'd be nice to have a bunch of rooms, but when you're a student who's studying for a midterm, I know like SMU's atrium is open 24/7 now, and students love it. It's got a 3-story green wall, like glass ceilings. It's a nice place to study, and it makes it all the difference when you have to be working away at a term project or something like that where you have somewhere nice to stay. So I understand it's a lot of money, but that's, why you have loans and stuff.
Actually, I want to speak pretty much to that point, actually. I mean, whenever I go into the Killam, even during like exam times, and I walk around in the back of the Killam Library, I mean, I see tons of study spaces open, so I think students do want, when they say they want more study spaces, I think they do mean that they want better looking study spaces, more quality study spaces.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's totally true, and I think that's something that has been skimmed over are the positives of the atrium. I think that that it could be potentially really nice, but I think the fact that it's so much more expensive, like a lot of the positive things about the atrium could be incorporated into the sub in a different way that wasn't so expensive, like someplace that was like 24 hours and nice, but wasn't an extra $8 million or something. I don't know. I just think that there might be an alternative solution as opposed to like atrium with all these awesome benefits or no atrium at all with no benefits. I think there's definitely some middle ground there that might be able to be worked on, and I know that the architects already like did this and stuff, but it's like a big deal, so I think it might be something to look into more.
So that was the time allotted. So moving on to number 6 on the agenda, 6A, we have a decision about student assistance. So be it resolved, I'll just read it out. Be it resolved that the DSU endorse the principles, concerns, and recommendations from the Students Nova Scotia position paper on student assistance. So this would be something that we'd be voting on, but to open it up for discussion, we'd have to get someone to...
I'll move it and I'll speak to it.
We'd have to get someone to move the motion. So can we get someone to move the motion? I think Aaron wants to move it. And a seconder? I think Josh was... So now that we can... Sorry, Sagar. So now we'll open it up for discussion, and I'll keep a speakers list. So does anyone want to speak?
I just need to present it a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So Aaron will give a little preamble.
Sorry for interrupting you. Okay, I'm hesitant to go over this because I hate trying to explain things, these things that aren't necessarily the most sexy. So maybe I'll ask, how many people know what the graduate retention rebate is? Okay. Oh, sweet. That's great. Okay, I guess before I get into what this paper is actually suggesting, I want to first apologize for not bringing this to council before. Messed up, didn't realize it was coming to the Students' Nova Scotia board meeting before the council and whatnot. So I actually already voted on it, and again, I'm sorry. It was approved unanimously at the last Students' Nova Scotia board meeting. So this vote is actually not going to change the outcome. I'm not sure what would change the outcome anyway. But what it would allow us to do is this will be the official DSU stance on it. So if we choose to vote against it or vote for something else, that will be our stance, and that will mandate me to speak politically and anyone else to speak publicly about those things. Any questions about that? Okay, so the paper. Is essentially recommending, it's the Students Nova Scotia Student Assistance paper, and it's recommending that we take the money that is currently being committed to the graduate retention rebate and put it towards upfront needs-based grants. The graduate retention rebate is a tax rebate that you can apply for if you graduate and are in Nova Scotia and working, and when you fill out your taxes, you basically fill out a bit on this form and you get rebates. It's a very problematic tax policy, in my opinion, in the opinion of most student unions and student federations in the country. There's almost consensus in Nova Scotia that it was problematic from the beginning and has always. When the NDP first implemented it 4 years ago, everyone told them not to, and they did anyway. And since then, we've been telling them it's not a good use of money for a couple of reasons, because it doesn't go to those who need it. You need to make a certain amount of money to actually benefit from it. And it benefits you after you graduate from university, meaning people take out loans, make a decision to go to school based on a certain price, not knowing they're getting money back, suffer through school with the stress of having all that debt hanging over them and whatnot, and then they're being they get this afterwards. Generally, the general rule is that upfront needs-based grants are more effective. It's putting the interest on the government and on the student and whatnot. So the DSU has actually been recommending that we scrap this. Last year, you'll remember, we were harping on the number 25. We had a puppy walk, and in our meetings with the minister, we were recommending that she eliminate the provincial portion of student loans by using this tax credit. Provincial student loans are 40% of student loans when you apply. It's partly federal, partly provincial. So the government has actually never given us a response on this. When meeting with the minister, we would walk circles around her talking about these things, and they've never actually said, no, we're not going to do that for these reasons. And I think it's actually proof of why student action is really important, because they've committed to this thing that is politically popular in some way. People love to talk about retention, right? Youth retention is a big thing. So to actually take money out of that would be hard politically, and that's my take on why they haven't done this yet. This paper is really important for the DSU, I think, because we've been advocating for this for a while, but Students Nova Scotia hasn't. And last year they were actually recommending that the ratio of grants to loans only be changed by 10 or 5%, I forget. And that's actually what the government did. So when we were advocating for elimination of student loans, they were advocating for a 10% reduction, which was just kind of a slight to us in some ways, and council was unhappy about that last year, so we're happy that they've come around. Also importantly, the first version of the paper that I sent out was what went into the board meeting. And the things that were changed were pretty crucial. So initially, they were recommending that the graduate retention rebate be scrapped and put towards a debt cap and something else. Oh, God. I guess just changing the loan grant-to-loan ratio. And we actually got it to a much bigger ask and a pretty solid, if we actually won this, we'd be by far the most progressive province in the country on student assistance. So it'd be eliminating provincial portion of student loans in favor of grants for graduate and undergraduate programs, which is something we won in that board meeting. And the paper has a whole bunch of analysis of how these things work and some other smaller recommendations for Nova Scotia. So I won't go any more. I've kind of bored everyone enough, I'm sure. But if you have questions, let me know. Motion to go into question period.
Well, we are.
Okay, great.
So we've got Brett and then Ishka. And was there anyone else who just had their hand up? No. So do you want to?
I'll go fast. As I understand it, the systems that exist now is no money up front, and then there's tax credits at the end if you stay, correct? There is some money up front. But less than the grants at the end. And certainly I'm not one to advocate for the government position. I love money in my pocket now, not later. But one thing that I think is important to consider going in is that part of the motivation for the government program to run this way, and to understand, to advocate effectively, you have to understand their interest behind it, is to keep people in Nova Scotia after and reward those who stay. When the government puts money up front and people leave, it's a harder sell for them. So I'm not advocating their position, but certainly worth considering when you meet and present with them.
Talking to that too about staying in Nova Scotia, that does not, it does not go in conjunction with most of the international students. Students tend to move out of Nova Scotia most of the time. Besides that, my main consideration is that since we're talking about endorsing the SNS paper, would it be on a conditional basis, or do we just be blinded and whatever they say and we go ahead and endorse it? Would it be conditional? Like there have been times earlier when they were still going through their drafts that we have discussed. There were certain points that we were in favor of and others that we weren't. So would the sort of endorsement be conditional based on a discussion within the council that these are most of the points and that we pass to endorse those points and maybe not the others?
I've actually done a lot of activism around the retention rebate plan, and it's a very underused program where the government says they put the money into it, and they do put that money, but it's not used, so it keeps getting recycled. So if they actually put the money in upfront grants, all that money would be actually getting used. So yeah, just wanted to make that point.
Actually, that's pretty good. That would actually make a pretty good point. If anything, what you just said makes it seem like there's an issue with actual, like, where money is actually being allocated and if it's being allocated properly. And if it really is just building up, how much money is left is actually just sitting in this grant. But what I was going to go for was more agreeing with Brett in the sense that this is really, it's the provincial government is dumping a lot of cash into us being here. I mean, school doesn't cost $1,000, at least $6,000 a year, give or take, up to $10,000 or whatever. It just doesn't cost that much. It's not that cheap to actually attend university. The province puts a lot of money into it, and to not get people to stay in the province and to reinvest in Nova Scotia is, it's tough, and that's clearly the reason for it. So if you're going to advocate against it, you should probably advocate for the funds that are not being used to be reallocated, as opposed,
Yeah, I'm supportive of this policy proposal. I've actually been in meetings with the minister about this precise issue, taking the money currently allocated to the graduate retention tax rebate and transferring to needs-based grants. The meetings with the minister were actually kind of embarrassing because I was winning the argument with her. I think she knew I was winning it, but she couldn't say anything about it because she was basically whipped by party policy. We know that the retention rebate hasn't really had any discernible impact. It's called the graduate retention tax rebate, but that doesn't mean it's actually retaining graduates. I mean, politicians might, oversell themselves. Who knew? So, if you're talking about youth retention or graduate retention, You have to think about what's going to push youth out of the province and what's going to keep them in. So push factors and pull factors. Things like high debt are actually a push factor in a province like Nova Scotia, where youth unemployment is so high, wages are low. So if you want to pay off a big debt, you've got to go somewhere like Alberta where there's actually jobs. So if you want to address the two major issues, high debt and high youth unemployment, that's your graduate retention strategy, not some harebrained tax credit. So yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, I wanted to speak. I mean, JC hit on a lot of it there. I think that retention is, in theory, kind of a cool idea, but I think a lot of times we shouldn't really necessarily just trying to be forcibly keeping students here. If students want to go and, graduates, if they want to go and work elsewhere after they've graduated, I don't think that there should be financial constraints preventing them from doing that. And I think that if we want to attract people to Nova Scotia, there are probably better ways of doing that. And giving students more money up front. And I mean, these are students from Nova Scotia, right? This, just to be clear, this really only applies in most cases to students who are permanent residents of Nova Scotia. This doesn't affect me at all because I'm technically still a permanent resident of Ontario. But I think that giving people money up front is an incentive because, as JC said, you end up with less debt when you graduate. So finding a job immediately isn't as much, or finding a high-paying job immediately isn't as much of a concern. They have more opportunity to stay in Nova Scotia. Last thing, I do agree with Ishika's point that there are a lot of other recommendations on this paper that we should, I do recommend that everyone read. At the very least, I recommend reading through the concerns and recommendations in that brief that Aaron sent out. But having been there for Bob's presentation, Bob's the researcher for Students Nova Scotia, I can say that he really dug deep into a lot of the statistics around student debt broadly. And a lot of times his recommendations, in fact, all the time, his recommendations are really, a lot of times they're equity-based. So he's trying to make sure that the structures that we have in place to alleviate that financial burden on students are consistent with the financial burdens that they're subject to. So things like being a parent while you're in school, the amount that you might be contributing to a savings plan for your child is not normally taken into account. He has recommendations that take that into account. Things like retirement savings plans aren't taken into account. He recommended that those be considered and be withdrawn. So there are a lot of really positive recommendations in this paper that I think people should read through. I highly recommend it.
What I would be telling them would be in reference to an international student working group that Aaron kind of put me on. So this is something that the province is doing. They have a working group set up talking about retention and how to bring in more international students in Nova Scotia, how that's going to affect the province. There have been huge discussions around retention of students, and again, like Pat said, it's only unfair to keep a student here, just forcefully pull them in and put them here, even if they have better opportunities outside. But the main thing that I want to mention is that the Students Nova Scotia paper has been discussed on that working group as well. Questions have been put up on the methodology of how the data has been collected and analyzed for the paper. So again, my main stress is that before we go into endorsing the entire paper as it is, we need to look through the main points. We need to see how the survey was done, how the data was collected, what is the credibility of their methodology over that, and then move into considering specific points that go in conjunction with the DAL students as it is, because at the end of the day, we are the DAL Student Union. We need to endorse more for what the DAL students want than for what the SNS overall would want. So maybe the same point, that be more conditional in endorsing them instead of going ahead and saying that we need to follow, we totally accept all the recommendations made by the paper.
So this kind of ties into what she was saying, so I don't remember her name. Have you guys looked at the population breakdown of Dalhousie students? Because some of the things that I've seen in previous years is, like, I'm pretty sure Dal's pretty close to being like 50% Ontario students, good chunk international students, good chunk the rest of Canada. So if you're putting in a policy and you're gonna stand behind it, and also realize that Dal, being the largest member school of the SNS, holds a lot of weight. If you're going to put in a policy that strictly benefits Nova Scotian students, and full disclosure again, I would count as a Nova Scotian student, so I'm not biased here, you may want to reconsider that. So for example, this money might be better served going into, like for the Dal student population as a whole, going into setting up something like a tuition freeze over a certain number of years that's been done over the past, rather than an upfront grant for Nova Scotia students, if you're looking at this from the point of view of serving Dal students as a whole, because frankly, the majority of Dal students aren't Nova Scotians.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. I gotta get to my notes. Yeah, I guess I'll just address a couple things people brought up. One, just the idea of retention. Like JD said, this is called the retention rebate. We do know that people graduate. First of all, they often don't make enough money to actually qualify for that much money in the rebate. And like the general rule we go with is that, well, tax rebates might be like a pull factor. Debt is a bigger push factor, right? If people are going to make $200, $300, $1,000, they're still going to go to out west to make a whole bunch of money, right? So it's better that they actually graduate less debt and have the ability and the freedom to invest in a house, invest in a job, and whatnot. In terms of voting on it and making it conditional, we can, since like voting on this is basically just the student union stance, we can do whatever we want, right? If we want to add a be it further resolved that we disagree with a certain part, we can do that. On that note, we can also table this if people feel like we've had a bit of a conversation and they want to go back and bring it up again next week, 2 weeks from now. The notion of sitting on this and having it build up, I just wanted to clarify that since this is a tax rebate, there's actually no budget line for it. The government doesn't say we're going to, like, there's this much money, and then like if they don't use it by the end of the year, it builds up, because it's like theoretical money, if that makes sense. The last point I think I want to make is just about research, and I just to disagree with Pat a bit about. I guess I think in many ways this is an example of how research shouldn't be seen as like true or and researchers as these expert people to be listened to, right? This paper actually came in my opinion, in a really regressive form. It was recommending eliminating the cap on student loans, which is what we've seen around the world. In England, just when they had riots the other year, what the government did is they eliminated the cap on student loans, at the same time tripling tuition, right? In Australia, the same thing happened. So while that might be a good policy in some sense, and researchers kind of like show that like this makes sense, students need more student loans, so we should do this, politically it's not necessarily the best thing. So I think just something to note for down the road is like this paper came in a certain form with certain research done on it, but there was a really intense political discussion that ultimately led to a paper that represented, hopefully, politics of certain students. So just to note that. Was there someone else on the speakers list?
No. So that was about the amount of time we had allotted. So right now we would be voting on it unless someone wants to motion a time to postpone the amendment or change the amendment. I didn't know if anyone wanted.
Can we get a temperature check? How people feel on voting on this right now?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of asking. So thumbs up would mean people feel ready to vote on it. Thumbs down would mean maybe someone, maybe not. I can't really tell what that.
You can do this if you don't know. Do something.
Can you make a decision on that?
I would say we wouldn't vote on that right now.
So does someone maybe want to make a motion to
table this until next meeting?
Okay, so that would be amendment. Second. Okay, so the motion will be postponed, and if people want it. Oh, sorry, I thought that. Yeah, all in favor? Okay, so if people maybe want to take that time to read over the paper and kind of, so we can maybe have a more informed decision for next time?
Can you change the wordings to that, maybe adding by the end
That could, when we bring it up next meeting, you can make a friendly amendment to the motion. Yeah. And then it can be changed when people actually vote on it. I just lost my agenda. So next thing on the agenda is another decision, the Bill of Rights. It's up there. Be it resolved that the DSU endorse the Bill of Rights and call on the university to fulfill its recommendations. The Bill of Rights are just being handed around right now, so is this something people haven't been presented with yet? Okay, so this is something that everyone's been presented with already, but there's a physical copy being handed around right now. To open it up for discussion, we would need someone to motion, to move the motion. We've got moderate. Okay. For how long? Yeah, 10 minutes. So can I get a seconder for that? All in favor? We're just opening up for moderated caucus to talk about it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we've got JD giving a little introduction, and then really brief introduction, and then we will open it up for we have moderated caucus, and I'll be keeping a speakers list.
All right, thank you. This is a document that's been produced over a period of several months in conversations with a working group called Dalhousie United. It was something that was started up through some members of, I think it started with the student union back in the winter shortly after the Faculty Association released a report showing that a lot of money over a period of time was being transferred from the operating budget to the capital budget. Basically the idea behind it was that faculty, students, and staff should be talking to each other and knowing what's going on in each other's worlds at Dalhousie, because we're all a part of this university. So it is important to have these kind of conversations because like, a good example is when the Science Society was doing petitioning around library hours. A question that could come up is, if they restore the hours, could that affect somebody's job at the library? So they get laid off to pay for the hours. So rather than trying to fight each other for limited scraps, we should try and put forward some sort of unified, at least vision, if not very specific agenda. We came up with something, 3 broad principles we want to talk about. We want quality education, we want meaningful participation in the governance at Dalhousie, and we want transparency and accountability from the institution. And from those 3 principles, we should just get into some broad, not super specific ideas about how to achieve those 3 principles. So like an example, under quality education, we know that budget cuts will affect quality. So recognizing that where possible, we should be talking about, limiting cuts wherever possible. That's one example there. Some could be around more meaningful consultation around new auxiliary and ancillary fees, because there's been some cases where the university has implemented things like a $50 convocation fee as a way to make up for their inability to raise tuition beyond 3%, even though the Memorandum of Understanding says they can't do that. So this is the kind of stuff we talked about, and we've been passing this document around for input and feedback, because more input is always a good thing. We took it to the Dal Arts and Social Science Society, and they were pretty enthusiastic about it, but just opening up for some conversation. So have at it.
So as JD said, we did pass this. It was pretty close to unanimous for DAS officially endorsing the Bill of Rights. Being involved in conversations last year when the budget was arising, especially at the faculty level, it was really clear right from the beginning that barely anyone had any idea of what was actually going on. They proposed the 3% cuts across the board. No one had any idea what that would translate into. And now we're looking at programs not able to be run, professors unable to be hired, professors not able to be replaced, and then the library acquisition fees, and facing a whole bunch of issues that are attacking our academics and the student academic experience here at Dalhousie. We pay some of the highest tuition rates in the country. We deserve to have the basic rights of having quality education. We deserve to know where our money is going, and we deserve to be able to participate in these decisions as students, as the funders of this.
Just on the topic of governance, I don't know how well aware you guys of this, but like compared to other universities in Nova Scotia, Dal has like really surprisingly poor representation in their university's governing bodies. So when I was involved in student government at SMU, I was really surprised to find out that you guys like aren't on your budget committee, you're not on any committees at the Board of Governors, and like that's some like the finance committee and things like that. You guys actually got on them?
Two students are on the budget advisory committee, and there are students on all of the board subcommittees, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah. Okay.
So the budget advisory committee. Do you want to finish?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. And then just the final point about that is I'd just like to hear from someone about how you're going to kind of make actions out of this document.
Yeah, the comment around the budget committee is really important. There's always been space for a student on the committee, but this was the first year that the DSU actually had any input in who that student was. So last year with the budget advisory committee, they just found some student that they handpicked from, I think it was a commerce student, I'm not entirely sure. But we didn't find out that there was student representation until way too late, and the committee was already coming to this council to give a presentation. So this time we said we want DSU representation on this committee. And so they said, submit 3 names, we'll pick 2. We submitted 3 names, they picked 1. And said, oh, that's fine. So I actually had to fight to get on that committee, even though they said we could be on the committee. So this is the kind of thing we're up against. They don't make things like faculty budgets public, and so that's some of the demands around transparency. And so answering the question of how to implement some of these things, we have meetings of the Dallas United somewhat frequently. We just did an action recently on Halloween. It was a creative one. We did a graveyard to things that have been cut, lost to budget cuts, things like the Office of the Ombudsperson, some professors that had to leave, some classes that were cut. It got good media. It was pretty creative, but the next steps are still under discussion. There'll also be meetings with like Dr. Florazone under the 100 Days of Listening.
So yeah, we also brought the Bill of Rights to our council meeting, and we did decide to endorse it. But one of the things that came up was that it looks like a really cool symbolic document. But what are those actions? And kind of answered that, which is good to know. That was it. That was my question.
We've got Aaron, and then someone give
the speakers. Yeah. Oh, fuck, I don't understand. I guess I just wanted to note a couple wins we've had. Some of them have been like getting on these committees. Another, what I would call a win, is I'm sure you all heard about the VEP Finance resigning mysteriously. I think that's a win because it shows that Florazone, our new president, is willing to make some big changes in order to see the vision that students have for the university actually actualized. I think that only happened actually from a lot of pressure from the student union and students at the grassroots level, calling the university out for not being transparent, for being super manipulative in consultations, and for lying straight up. I think that's the only reason that's happened. I think it's a really, really positive move. Other thing I'd say is I think the value of this document is, one, it was a reason to work together. The university has partly benefited from the unions being divided on campus. So every time there's a faculty strike, as much as I personally don't necessarily agree with everything the faculty demand, I think they often don't reach out to students enough. But the university succeeds when they have this incredible propaganda machine that divides us, right? And the scariest thing that's happened to them since is having a document that is circulated that says faculty, students, and staff with one common list of things. So I think another thing we're looking at doing is having a panel discussion, actually the 29th, at the University Club at 5 o'clock, with one member from each union, particularly one professor who left. She was here in the Canadian Studies Department, Erin Walker. She's going to come back and speak about her experience working here for 6 years without being offered tenure and whatnot. So I think that and other actions, and I think it's also important to have all these things included together, because when, as JD said, we demand one thing and it's not connected to these other things, they have a quick response. So as long as we can keep on demanding that these budget cuts not happen, and when they respond saying we don't have money, we say give us transparency, and when they say something else, we say we want like these broader changes to happen as well. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Somebody would have to give me their speaking. Oh, good. 2 questions about this document. The first is, in what way, how is it planning to be used? Is it just a document that's going to be circulated, or is it something that's going to be specifically brought up to the administration explicitly? And by just a question on the actual vote that the be it resolved, so would they be committing to the principles of the document, like that students have the right to quality education, or would they have to agree to the entirety of the document, like the demands? Because it seems like there's a disconnect between the rights and the demands. So you have, on one hand, the right to participate in governance, and then you have the set of demands. Could the university, under what you're proposing, the BERT, could they say, we agree in principle that students have the right to participate in governance, and then say, no, I don't we're not going to increase student, faculty, and staff representation? Could they do that? So those were just my questions. Yeah, so I agree with like pretty much everything in the document in principle, and I also like the symbolic nature of the document. So I'm going to be the devil's advocate here, but the only thing that I don't necessarily like, if something with the name Bill of Rights, like Student Bill of Rights, was going to be passed, and Student, Faculty, and Staff Bill of Rights was going to be passed, I would want it to be. This sounds weird, but I would want it to be looked over probably by like legal professionals. Like, we have access to those people, whether they were law students or anything like that. I know it's not legally binding as a document, but I do think that, as you mentioned, some of the principles don't necessarily connect automatically to the rights, and there could be disagreement. I may not agree with every single one of these statements, and even if I do, it doesn't necessarily mean that I think that the university should be bound to abiding by them. So I'd love to be able to endorse a document like this, but
treat us like mushrooms. They keep us in the dark and they feed us manure. So part of this is actually saying we need to know more. Things like the faculty budgets should be public and accessible to students. They are not currently. So this is part of the actual battle we're waging. So yeah, thanks for that comment. It's really good.
Oh no.
Just to answer the questions, Matt, I don't think like these demands aren't things that we're gonna, it's not like we're never gonna give up until these things are completed, right? I don't think the Board of Governors, to be honest, is actually gonna change. But I think actually us demanding that starts a really important discussion about how our university is governed. So no to what you said. In terms of legal and the transparency thing, I'm just not sure. Like the DFA paid for a full financial audit, and they did the best they could. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to do any better. So in terms of that kind of legal expert advice, and same with hard numbers, I would suggest we just vote on it. It's not going to be the end of the world. People who don't feel comfortable can vote against it. We can change it down the road. But I think since this is a document that lots of different people are signing on to, it kind of makes sense for it to be one document and not to be fragmented. So I'll call a question, actually.
Okay, so was that a point of information? You mean amend the motion?
Amend the motion.
Yeah. A friendly amendment?
It might not be friendly if it's not considered friendly. Yeah. So I would motion to amend the current motion reads, be it resolved that the DSU endorse the the DSU endorse the Bill of Rights and call on the university to fulfill its recommendations I would say be it resolved that the DSU endorsed the Bill of Rights and call on the university to fulfill its recommendations on the condition that the Bill of Rights is given a check and edit from the DSU's legal counsel. Is that friendly with? It would be like a 5-minute check, dude. Like, sorry, that's not. That it's bulletproof. It doesn't contradict itself anywhere, and like understanding any of the ties. Okay, we'll have to vote on it then.
So first we'll vote on the amendment. Yeah, so can we get someone to second the amendment? So we're just voting on the amendment that Sagar has made to the motion, and then we will vote on the actual motion. So can we get everyone all in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Are you? Okay. Would you like your, and then any abstentions? Like, oh, okay, all in favor. Okay. Any opposition? Any abstention? It means you don't want to vote either way. Did you want your abstention noted? Okay. So the amendment has passed. So now we will be voting on the motion. Do you want to just read the motion out again, Sagar? So this is what we'll be voting on now.
So I just typed it in there saying that it's the same motion on the condition that the bill be given one final revision by the DSU.
So can I get someone to motion to call the question? And we've got a seconder? Sagar? Okay, so everyone in favor. Any opposition? Any abstention? Would you like your abstention noted? Okay. Okay.
Any opposition noted?
Mm-hmm. Oppositions are generally noted. It's okay. But that's to say, though, that the motion did pass. Okay, so we also have a C under 6. It's just a discussion, though, so we won't be voting on anything, and it's about the executive reform. So we'll do a go-around, just where people can give their opinion, and I think Aaron is introducing this. Or Sagar?
So cool. Can I just ask first, does anyone want a paper copy of it? It's limited, but
I think Matt and Alex. Yes.
In the email it said, by the way, this document is confidential. Is it actually confidential? Is it not?
Great question. So we asked that the chair keep this confidential. Unfortunately, the council chair emailed it to the Dalles Gazette as well. And so, and because the Dalles Gazette is included on all council emails so that they know what's going on. So it doesn't really matter because so the preamble will kind of resolve this. So it said the document was confidential. Realistically, this document is not. It says proposal at the top. I don't know if that's the right verbiage. It's really just like some musings, massaging out some of the greater ideas of the executive reform, giving you some more context on the thoughts. I guess this isn't really a proposal. So what we're looking for in this go-around is initial reactions to that sort of like long-term vision. So this is kind of like a long-term vision that we as an executive are deliberating right now. I wouldn't even say that we've come to complete consensus on it yet, but we are deliberating it right now. But we figured it would be great to have some real feedback to feed these deliberations as opposed to just our 5 opinions. So initial reactions are appreciated. Suggestions, questions, concerns, queries, comments, confusions, clarifications. Cool. Awesome. So I like we're gonna do the same way we did with the Reno. So you don't have to speak, but we appreciate it, and we appreciate it if you don't want to too.
I thought it looked great.
I had a question about as your a lot of it is like consolidation of executive positions. We only have 3 executive positions going forward. Was there a real reason for consolidation of things? I mean, in your comparison to other universities, and I've got experience with this. There was a separation between an academic who focused solely on academics, an external only on external business, internal only internal, secretariat, all these things individually. But in this proposal, you've got almost all of those under one person. A lot of it was under the VP VP external affairs, student affairs, and yourself actually. So that's 3 people. Okay, it's 3 people, I guess. But a lot of those things are really put under single people. Like, can you maybe rephrase your question? So I can answer it?
We also might, if you want to write down the questions, and then we'll go forward on it.
Well, I felt like so my question really is, what is really the point of hyper consolidation that you seem to be having of these positions as opposed to maybe expansion to allow for more focus on each individual item?
So we'll get a response to the questions after we.
I'm not sure I see a consolidation in the document, except for I think it looks really great, and I'm looking forward to more discussion around it. I don't think I have anything else to say.
I didn't see consolidation either, but I think expansion is good. I know a lot of the portfolios are pretty intense, and I know academic and external is pretty ridiculous portfolio to have. So opening that up I'm all for that.
Do you guys still have a VP Finance? Well, this is no offense to you. I don't know you at all. Maybe think about getting rid of a VP Finance. It's a really odd situation to put a student in. Get someone who knows how to do accounts and books and stuff, and like I mean from like a legal point of view, you guys might be great. You're probably fantastic. I mean, I'm sure. It's just like it you might have, and if you do, then you'd have redundancies.
Speaking to the, I like the idea of splitting the VP external and VP academic role. I think that I don't know how a university of 10,000 managed it when they first set out the thing, let alone 18,000. Like, it's just a lot of responsibility to have under one hat. So I think that splitting those 2 positions up was a good idea. Generally, I think that based on the number of students that are attending the university, adding a couple of positions and spreading out the distribution of work is a really good idea. So I think that kudos to that. And I also like the recommendation of having staff hired on 5-year terms rather than just being permanently, because the thing is that as a student you come in with an open mind with your staff, and that's very good. I think that's the right thing to do, but you only have them for a year and you kind of inherit them. So if there's no opportunity for you to actually review their performance of their role and decide whether or not you're going to rehire them, then you're basically just inheriting a staff member whether or not they're doing their job well, right? So I think it's a really good way of making sure that the university is, especially that the student union is spending their money well.
I have a plethora of questions surrounding this exec reform, perhaps more suited for like an individual basis. My initial reactions are there's a lot of great things that we can take out of this. There's a lot of things that I really just want to ask why. So I'm just really unsure right now about it. No, I'll handle it myself.
I don't have any issue with the reform. I think it's a good idea. I think that the roles will be more manageable.
I think it's a fantastic document, especially like things that often go under the radar. But Lindsay having to do communications, policy, and PR. Those are like 3 things that could each have a full time. So I really like the piece on that in there. Not so much for consultation with the broader student population, but with council, I think it's really important. Like, what does complete union reform mean? Like, step by step, how are we going to get there? Like, how long is it going to take? If it doesn't happen, if we keep tabling things, which often happens on the council, like, will it just die when you guys, when there's new exec in May? What? Okay, sure.
A lot of my concerns are in line with Taylor's, just more about like a comprehensive timeline, what that will look like, especially for incoming execs. Again, as many people have said, I really like the split of external and academic. I think it's really important to have someone focusing on what's going on in the university and someone else trying to manage what's going on outside. So really good job, guys. It seems like you've taken a lot of care and look into your portfolios and picked out what's important.
That was actually like super helpful. Let's go for a coffee. But yeah, there's a lot there too, like to unpack, especially in terms of like in the VP Finance that Owen mentioned. I really appreciated that. I mean, like again, this is not a robust or comprehensive like reform proposal. I don't even want to call it that word. But I think that one thing that happened in the VP Finance, and this one was that the VP Finance would be more focused on finance and operations. I think it's Josh brought up a great point in these discussions that the budget needs to lie in the hands of students. Ultimately, there's a lot of things that Josh does that he's really flipping good at. But there's also a lot of like inefficiencies in our current system with his job, and I think that he could be looking over some more of the operational stuff. And it just doesn't have like enough time in a day. No. Yeah, no. Sorry, I also didn't mean my statement as a like blowing smoke or like pumping his tires back up or anything. I was just trying to state some facts. I think there was another thing I wanted to mention, but yeah, like the splitting of the academic and the external, I think is something that people are really digging, and I think that's really important. I also just want to talk. I think one thing that I do see, like a perceived consolidation, is that the VP internal is gone, and it's now VP Student Affairs. And in this proposal, I just want to bring attention to the fact that like that means that the VP Student Affairs oversees all of the societies, so what Rams does, but then who's going to take care of all the student life stuff that Danny does? And so in this proposal, we have a programmer, a full-time staff person, where the VP Student Affairs would walk over and say, I want to book Said the Whale. The highest we're going to go is 6,500. It's in the Greywood. It's a 19-plus show. Make it happen. Right now, Danny's like arguing with band agents on the regular, and it's just like it's not what he was elected to do. People didn't elect him because he's like good at negotiating band prices. People elected him because he had a vision. So just some thoughts there. Again, I'm also open to sitting down one-on-one with people on this one. Yeah, and let's talk. I'm really curious about people's thoughts if we have time, maybe now or maybe just later. The thoughts about some of the new proposed staff people, i.e. the full-time programmer and then the executive director. So everyone's saying like, yeah, this is great, kind of the reform stuff, but I don't know if people really thought about the executive director and also the governance hierarchy, if that makes sense, because the board of operations isn't in there.
Does anyone have any thoughts directly relating to staff? Starting with William.
Just as a kind of a point to point out, I guess. So these changes with the hierarchy of the student union and stuff, all this reform and stuff, is likely to be going on at the same time as we're actually reforming the sub itself in some degree, however renovations may appear. So we need to just keep anything which is happening does need to be kept suitably loose, I guess, in its final framework in case something resolves and it's like, oh no, we need a full-time firefighter on staff because the building catches on fire occasionally, right? So if, like, you know, we do need to, that's relatively unlikely, but we do it, stuff like that would mean that we'd need to keep whatever we format the DSU to be a little bit more rougher than we'd necessarily like, partially just because our physical ability and appearances and services are going to be changing. So.
Yeah, just speaking to the point Sagar made, I think, like, broadly, I've spoken with Aaron about it too when it comes to advocacy. Like, one thing that he pointed out is there's no reason why somebody who's elected as VP external, for example, who has a vision for the university and what they want to do and interact with government, that doesn't mean they should know how to organize a political campaign going into the role. If there was a staff member who's already, you know, well versed in that, and that could be a recently graduated student who's employed part-time. I mean, it could be anything, but it's just the idea that anything that is professional, that is a skill, like something that somebody should already have coming in, should be something that is professionalized. And then the idea of vision, like that's what our politicians are for, is actually having some kind of vision for how they want things to go, setting a direction. Those are what the roles are for elected positions. You know, you don't necessarily elect, you do want them to be qualified, but you elect them for their vision. You don't elect them for their ability to negotiate with bands, etc.
Pat, that was very well said. I agree with everything. Or Rob Ford, as of tonight. Very well said. Just quickly, oh, what's my point? Oh, I'd just be curious, like, for more hashing out of exactly like how much power the ED would have, because I think that's like based on the structure, like underneath the exec, but still, like, if they were around for 5, like, yeah, so like, and around like staff people, checking in like with staff people for performance as well. So yeah, how they. Sorry, ED, Executive Director. Apologies, thank you. How much power and what role exactly the Executive Director would play, given that they were around for 5 years?
They would be the king of the union, or queen. We're going to go to a monarchy. That's the part of the reform. No, why don't we sit down and hash that out together? Can I have one? Yeah. Cool. My last thing too is that this is also indicative of larger issues that we could be addressing as well. So, for example, things along the lines of the words, like, because right now it says executive reform. What about like a governance reform? Is this really the best way for the student union to be making decisions that are representative of the student body? So I'm just putting that on your radar. Because I mean, you look at like most student unions. I mean, we have a higher voter turnout, but it's still super low. And I think if our governance structures were more efficient or effective, or people had more faith in them, then we would have like 40% voter turnout instead of 18.6. So yeah, just some thoughts. That's like a super far out there. I'm putting it on your radar because I want to have these conversations at like a 5,000 foot level. That's just how I roll.
Just asking again if there were any last thoughts about the executive reform at this moment in time. There's always lots of time after. So if not, we're going to be moving on to the executive reports. Who would like to start?
So as we agreed upon before, we're not really going to talk about our reports. We'll just add on it. And if anyone has any questions for me, I guess just as one update. Question back there. Okay. Just a heads up for you guys. The revised budget's been completed. It's going to the board next Wednesday, and then it'll be coming to you guys immediately after it's done there, to be brought up and voted on the Wednesday preceding next Wednesday. So I guess next council meeting.
The only thing to add to my report is meeting with the new government on Friday. Looking forward to that. And we have an action plan for the end of the month, November 28th at 1:45 p.m. is the first day of the legislature. So we're going to have a legislature opening party with cake and balloons and lots of fun stuff. Besides that, like I said, reviewing some stuff and creating the vision for the next 6 months. So let me know if you have thoughts. On university issues. There's a Board of Governors meeting at the end of the month, the 26th, where I believe people are going to be bringing the petitions that DAS has been signing and other things. So encourage people to sign that petition, tell their friends, and come to that.
Any questions? Oh, Mr. Quinn.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. In your report, you said the website has been updated, getting there. I'm sure still a lot of pages, like all the last year DSU people are still on the DSU page, and Alia is not. So things like that should be a priority.
Absolutely, and that's D'Souza actually manages that website, so I'll have a conversation with her. Thanks.
I humble apologies. I actually didn't send out a report. Hashtag impeached. Like I was in Iceland for a lot of it. Yeah, so I didn't actually do a whole heck of a lot. Like Reykjavik's beautiful, but some of the more major things coming down the tubes in the next little while is this renovation process. We've indefinitely extended the consultation period until the end of the month. I'm trying to think like what else is going on these days. I've been doing a lot of work with the board and the board student experience committee, and JD's been actually really active on that, which has been super helpful. In the near future, we'll be looking for a graduate student representative to sit on the board of governors of the university's student experience committee. I guess any general questions. I think, and I'll also let folks know that this weekend the East Coast Student Leadership Conference is happening. Attend that if you want. And the other thing was that this weekend we as an exec are kind of going to sit down and go over a vision or a plan for the next year or next semester, and just kind of like talk through how stuff's gone and how stuff can go. So hashtag not impeached. Any questions? Yes, you can. Good question, Taylor. So yeah, that's one thing that I was working on was I emailed all the faculty level society presidents directly and asking to host a roundtable just so that I can know what's up and what people want the union to be advocating on, lobbying for, or what have you. I will give you a confirmation tomorrow morning because I've gotten a pretty hazy response, so I think it might be worthwhile to postpone.
So, were there any questions for
Oh, I have one more update.
Oh, good.
Myself and Kathleen Reed, the free school coordinator, are starting a fun little project, and if anyone wants to help, feel free. The idea is it's called Fort Talk. It's a talk show that we have guests on the talk show. You have to wear pajamas, and you build a fort, and then we host an interview, and then we do an activity. So it's a 10-minute episode. The first minute is a montage of building a fort, 5-minute interview, and then 4 minutes of some kind of an activity. So some of the guests that we have lined up include Richard Florzone, the Dog Father, and Rich O'Coin. And so, so if anyone wants to help with filming, post-production, fort building, putting hooks in my walls so that people can tie blankets, everyone has pillows to donate to Fort Talk, we'd really appreciate that. Or if you have pajamas. If you are helping, you will be required to wear pajamas.
Okay, so next we have notices of motion. Does anyone have any notices of motion? Going once?
Oh, yeah, you should do that.
So do you have a notice of motion?
It'll be a motion to pass the budget as it stands when I bring it to you. Well, it'll be sent out next Wednesday.
Any other notice of motion? Okay. So next would be announcements. Are there any announcements that anyone have? JD has an announcement.
Thank you. There's been a student named Jessica. She ran for the DSU last election. but there's been some issues around transphobia that she's been experiencing on campus, and there's been some issues in the media about it as well. She went to the CBC. So there's a rally tomorrow outside the sub just saying we're not going to tolerate discrimination and hate on our campus because it does happen here. I think it would send a really powerful message if councillors could come. So I'm going to ask you to attend if you have time. 4 p.m. outside the sub. The other one Aaron briefly mentioned in his report, it's an action on the 28th of November outside the legislature, which is down on it's on Barrington Street. And so this will be the first day of the first session of the new government, and we want them to see students on their first day. So it's a positive themed thing. It's not like this angry protest, rah, 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 but just so that they see students and actually talk to them on the first day. I think it's a really powerful message as well. So if you can make it, please come. 28th, and it will be at 1:20.
I'm sorry. Any other announcements?
In council is totally council related. I just wanted to update everybody. If you'll notice that I do the live stream of council every session. I just wanted to let people know that there have been 1,700 views of the council meetings so far, and that's an actual tally. So just in case you think that oh, I don't need to talk in the mic, nobody's watching, 1,700 people have watched, but that's also a great thing in re-transparency. So everybody should totally give themselves a pat on the back for being part of that.
Okay, cool. Is it cool? Yeah, use my speaking rights.
Just the thing you all know, Megan Leslie, at least by reputation, I imagine. She's doing a thingamajig in the sub on the 13th of November about student debt and other stuff, and with her role in the government and all those fun thingamajigs. So that's the 13th at 5 o'clock in 224, which is right there. So yeah.
Yeah, so Equity and Accessibility Committee meeting tomorrow. I already said it, but I wanted to remind people it's at 7 p.m. and we really want students to show up. It's a new office and we need to get the ball rolling. Also, we have a survey that we started. We haven't started heavily promoting it yet, but just letting people know that there's a survey going on talking about accessibility on campus, equity on campus, and we're going to be compiling these results all year, so we'll have lots of time for students to respond, and we'll be writing a report in reaction to that, just to update people. Any other?
Why do you always ask him? I just wanted to say the submissions people made for the advocacy review is actually wondering if I could collect those, just because I don't really, we didn't ask students whether they could. Those we didn't tell them it'd be circulated. So if you want to just pass them back, that'd be really great.
Okay. Yep.
Thanks for entertaining my. You guys are so ready to adjourn, aren't you? So the last announcement I'm going to make is that I'm getting a lot of feedback about some, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen that there was a display in the Student Union building. For a clothing line called Pink, owned by Victoria's Secret. There's been a lot of complaints about that, and I think it's our duty as a council to actually do something about those complaints or figure out where to move from here. So if you are interested after this, maybe not after this meeting because I do need to run, but send me an email. I want to sit down with a few people who that affected or who are interested in that, and maybe we can talk through, is this a change to facility operations policy? Is this a change to what have you, or is this acceptable? And I'm really interested to hear that conversation.
So next we have adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
We don't even vote.